In today's show, we're going to be talking NBA draft, and I'm joined by Keandre of the YouTube channel Hoop Intellect. Michael Bolton, what do you think?
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it. Indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_Beeble, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. As I said, we're here talking NBA draft with Keandre from Hoop Intellect. I'll link his channel in the description of this show, so you can go check out his show where he's got a bunch of breakdowns on players. We're going to be talking TyTy Washington, Mark Williams, Josh Minott, Orlando Robinson, amongst others. So, Warnie?
Let's get it on, Gilly.
All right, let's bring him in now. Keandre, Hoop Intellect, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you for having me on.
It's going to be good to dig into these prospects, and as I said before you came on, if you haven't checked out Keandre's channel at Hoop Intellect, go check it out. It is going to be linked in the description in the title of this show, so go check out all of his draft prospect profiles over there. But we're going to dig into some specific players here today, and with everyone who I've had on to ask about the draft, I've gone with two main questions. Number one, who is a prospect who you are higher on than consensus? And your guy here is TyTy Washington, the guard from Kentucky. Okay, so this is a draft class that is bereft of guards, of point guards especially, and we have seen over the years that Kentucky guards in general tend to underperform in college and outperform expectations. That's not a hard and fast rule because Marcus Teague exists, but this is something that has been a consistent theme over the last couple of years. So are you looking at the Kentucky system and TyTy and going, well, that really hampered what he's able to do, and with NBA spacing, NBA coaching, he is going to be someone that jumps up like so many of those other guys have?
Yeah, that's part of the appeal with him. I think, you look at the type of role that he was playing next to Xavier Wheeler, very much off the ball. Wheeler was doing most of the distributing and playmaking, had the ball in his hands more. I think that's part of it, but I also just kind of like the well-rounded nature of TyTy's game, just his ability to be solid at a number of things and great at, those mid-range pull-ups, attacking quick off the catch, as that defense is shifting, not wasting time. I think some of those things are really projectable towards the next level and part of his appeal. And then, as a shooter, I really think that he shot 35% this year on about 3 attempts. I think that he has a much higher ceiling than that. You look at the touch on the floaters and some of that mid-range stuff, and it's pretty suggestive towards his ability to be able to stretch his game out to the three-point line. So that's something I really bank on too. But like I said, like we were talking before, just kind of the whole consensus thing with some of these prospects, I'm not 100% sure at this point where like that really resides for TyTy. I think, we would probably say 20s area for him at this point.
Yep.
So I think that, anywhere from starting like 15, 16 range, I think that's somewhere that you could potentially start considering him. That's where I would say.
Look, I've talked a lot on this show about the lack of point guards in this class and top level guys. And then when you get to pick 10 and pick 11 is the Washington Wizards and the New York Knicks, who have definite holes there at that point guard spot. Is that too high for TyTy?
Just kind of depending on who's available and who's gone already. You've got guys like potentially Dyson Daniels, who's maybe there, or maybe he goes higher. I think, some players, some talents like a Johnny Davis or a Jalen Duren, who, whoever falls kind of to that range, it kind of makes things pretty muddy, or, whoever is in that range is going to make it a tough decision for them to make. But, I would at least, highly consider it for those kind of situations, just given the role that he was in, and potentially, was a little bit more left for him to offer.
A couple of things with TyTy. We talk about, like, he only averaged 3.9 assists, which is not very much as a point guard, but as you said, he wasn't handling the ball a ton, and he does have a pretty strong assist to turnover ratio of almost 2.4. 3.9 assists versus 1.6 turnovers. So that's more suggestive of the fact that he wasn't that he wasn't generating assists, he just didn't have those opportunities to create those passes and to run that offense as much. So that does give us a little bit of hope. The other thing that's a little bit interesting with him is that he is a freshman, Keandre, but he's going to turn 21 at the start of the season, so significantly older than a bunch of these other freshmen and older than a bunch of sophomores as well. What was the reason for that? Why is he that year older than, 2 years older than a lot of these guys? When you talk about like Jalen Duren, who you just mentioned, like this is a two full years older than what Jalen Duren is. And is that any level of like pause as to him as a freshman being this older? Not that 21 is old necessarily, but as a freshman player, it is a little bit abnormal to see someone at that age.
Yeah, so I believe he's, a little bit older in terms of like the class and everything, just because of, how he started in school in the US, and kind of how the grades shook out for him. But, that is something that you have to kind of consider with his overall upside and just being a little bit older than the rest of those guys. But I always kind of take a little bit of this approach of being like, he's also never played at this college level the same way that these other guys have. So there's kind of that learning or growth curve that we don't always talk about. The bigger thing I think with him that I would be most concerned with, or like kind of retract, and I understand why some people would be just a little bit lower on him, is because of his, inability to like really generate great rim pressure or separation. And obviously for a lead guard, that's one of the bigger things that you want out of them, even as good of a decision maker he is, or the low turnovers and things like that. But you also have to kind of point towards, what Kentucky's offense was doing. Oscar Tshiebwe is in the paint every possession. They had Keon Brooks, Jacob Toppin, and Ware out there kind of standing in the short corner. So you look on multiple possessions, there would be 3-4 guys in the paint, and that's a little bit more difficult to kind of get there. But there's just kind of a number of different factors. I just think that he's a really good player and somebody that I would like to have on a team, and then kind of, be able to kind of experiment with how much he can play on and off the ball. And
I was a bit down on him initially, but my last two mock drafts, I have pushed him into the very back end of the lottery. So I am looking at that Kentucky situation, Kentucky history, the dearth of guards, and the importance of guards in the NBA. So I have pushed him up over my last couple of mock drafts for a number of these factors that we've talked about. Here, we're going to talk about a guy that you're lower on in just a sec. But before we do that, it's time for me to tell you guys about PrizePicks, which is, of course, daily fantasy made easy. It's not just for the NBA. You can do all other sports, but for the NBA, with the NBA Finals Game 6 coming up in a couple of days' time, PrizePicks might be something you want to check out. It's easy. You pick 2 to 5 players, and they have their over-under for their projections, whether that's points or threes or rebounds, whatever. You just go in and go, all right, over, under, bang, I'm done. Push those players together into one entry, and you can win up to 10 times your entry fee. It's fast, it's safe, it's easy. What more could you ask for? It's not just NBA as well. You can combine NHL, Major League Baseball, the NFL, college sports when all those restart again, and put them all into one entry. And for a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. You get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point, but you must use that code NBA. That's right. It's an exclusive offer for Locked On fans. Sign up today. Use the code NBA. $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. PrizePicks, it's daily fantasy made easy. All right, let's talk about guys, or a guy that you are a little bit lower on than others, and that is Mark Williams, the 7'2" center, 21 years of age, or he will be 21 in the first month or two of the season. 7'2" center from Duke. Routinely mocked at the end of the lottery in that 13 to 15 zone, with Charlotte having those picks, because obviously they've had a need at center for about 10 years, it feels like. He is a sophomore. He played 24 minutes a night, average 11 and 7, almost 3 blocks per game, but a lot of hype for him came after the combine with some of the measurements, with a 7'7" wingspan, which is obviously insanely high. So in terms of you being a little bit more down on him, Is it because you don't think that he should be a lottery player because of what the strengths he's bring? Maybe you're not as high on those, or it's the fit of him in the modern NBA where you wouldn't want to waste a lottery pick on maybe someone with such limited offensive ability or maybe limitations in defensive switchability?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a combination of both. You look at sort of, what you kind of want out of that lottery level big man. And obviously he's going to bring the rim protection, 7'7" wingspan, 9'9" standing reach. Like, that's ridiculous. He's going to bring somebody who is a high level finisher, has good touch, and also a lob threat, potential vertical spacer as well. But on the flip side of that, is he really bringing you much as a playmaker? It's not somebody who you're going to really throw the ball into and tell him to go get you a bucket as a scorer. And also hasn't really shown much as a shooter either. So you kind of have those factors. And also, like what you mentioned before, somebody who, in terms of like scheme versatility, is somebody who's going to be a mostly drop big. Now, he is mobile enough to maybe be up to the level on screens and things like that. And, had some great moments out to like 15, 18 feet, kind of defending guards and holding his own, because that length is a great equalizer in a lot of situations. But, when we're talking lottery and then kind of comparing him with like a guy like Jalen Duren, who does have those flashes of playmaking and is a better athlete in a lot of ways and has some other aspects to his game that's just not there in the same ways. Now, for Charlotte specifically, I don't really mind it because, like you mentioned, like they do need a big man and somebody who brings sort of that value in terms of rim protection in a way that they just haven't had for really a long time, really ever. So I wouldn't mind it, particularly in that situation, 13 or 15. But when you start seeing places where they're mocking him at 9 or, to the Knicks and things like that, I start to get, a little bit more pause on that. And I just don't really, I just don't really value him in that way, in the same way.
So there are people who in mocks or comparisons will say they prefer him over Jalen Duren. I can't get behind that at all. I'm guessing you can't see a world in which that would be something that you would want to do either.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think Duren has shown more in terms of upside. He's younger as well, a better vertical athlete. A ton of different things. Doesn't have the measurables. He's not 7'2" in shoes with the, 9'9" standing reach and things of that nature. But I think there's just a lot more to his game and a little bit more upside that you would want for a lottery level big man. So that's kind of the reason that I turn towards Duren.
One thing we always want to look at with big men is there any stretchability in the offense? And he did hit 73% of his free throws, which is not absolutely elite, but it's also really solid and really serviceable. Is there any ability for him to be able to take a long to mid-range face-up jumper? Can he stretch out and hit corner threes eventually? Or is he just going to be a, hey, I'm catching lobs and dump off sort of player?
Yeah, I think I would bet that he's a, just lob rim runner type of guy, but he did, hit several mid-range jumpers throughout the season. He hit this one Dirk fade in the tournament that, and the free throw percentage, like you said, that are pretty suggestive to like maybe he's able to shoot. But like from this vantage point, there's no way you can put like a ton of real stock into that with such low volume, and we've never really seen it. But it's kind of like in your back pocket, like, okay, maybe he's able to shoot it if you're in an NBA organization. It's something that you kind of, try to water the seed. But other than that, I wouldn't place too much stock into it.
We're going to talk about a point guard coming up next. But before I get in to talk about that, it's time for me to tell you about BetOnline, your number one source for all of your betting, stats, and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, in fact, over at BetOnline, including news and odds for the NBA Finals, the NHL Stanley Cup Finals, Major League Baseball, the latest fighting news, MMA, UFC, boxing, everything. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. So head to the website today, that's betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action, and you can go and check to see that the Boston Celtics are 3.5-point favorites for Game 6 of the NBA Finals. I'm not sure about that one. They've looked a little bit rough the last couple of games. But BetOnline is, of course, where the game starts. Let's go to a point guard, Keandre. Older point guard, Mississippi State. We're looking at Iverson Molinar, 23 years of age, so obviously a lot older. 6'3" point guard who has got some pretty rough shooting numbers from last season, 25% from three, but he got to the line a ton. He hit a ton of those, 87%. Pretty solid, assist numbers, assist to turnover ratio, not terrible. Scored pretty well. He's probably never going to profile as a starting point guard in the NBA. He's more of a second round guy, but is there a case for him to be a solid early to mid second round player, or is it just someone that you think is just not going to be able to cut it on an NBA roster?
Yeah, so I kind of view him as more of that sort of mid to late second round type of pick. I thought he helped himself, a decent amount at the combine in the combine scrimmages. He's that talented scorer and creator. He's really has good pace and abilities in the pick and roll. One of the best floaters in the draft by a good margin. He's quick, he's shifty, he's got good speed, he moves his feet well defensively, even though he's more of a slider frame type of guy. But like you said, kind of that shooting is going to be a huge swing factor for him. If the shooting never really comes around in a big way, I think he was 0 for 2 in that second scrimmage and didn't shoot one in the first game. So, and then obviously shot 25% last year. The thing that was interesting is he shot over 40% in his second year. So there's some sort of variance there. You kind of got to see what's going on with him on that front. But yeah, I think he's worth at least a flyer, depending on the team, the situation. You need some depth, a potential piece in that sort of kind of combo guard role. I'm not 100% sure that he's ever going to be kind of that natural point guard. I think he's just more wired to score, and also just kind of the assists and taking care of the ball is something that he needs to work on a little bit as well. And also finishing at the basket. So it's just kind of a more of a flyer in my opinion. That's what I would say.
I'm glad you brought up the 3-point percentage from his sophomore year, because he shot 43.6%, which is, if we had a hitter come out after that year, we'd go, man, look at that shooting number. Like, that's fantastic. Then he goes back and shoots 25%. And he took the same amount of attempts, basically, 101 versus 107, but it was 17 made threes different. 44 made threes as a sophomore and 27 as a junior. So it's not a gigantic sample size. Like, it's 17 shots, 17 made baskets over one whole season, over 34 games. So it's like half a three a game. That's all it is that turns him from a 25% shooter to a 44% shooter. So I think when you look at his consistently being 77, 80, 87% from the line, 83% over his entire career in college, that's a larger sample size and he's more consistent there. That should give us a little bit indication that he's probably not a 44% three-point shooter, but he's also probably not a 25% three-point shooter. It's somewhere in the middle. So, again, timing and context and all these things, 25%, that's disgusting. It's so bad. But, hey, it was awesome the year before. So it probably fits somewhere in the middle there, especially when you pair it to the level of touch on floaters and his free throw percentage across those seasons. So we can't rule out that he'll be an average or above average three-point shooter. In fact, it's probably likely that he's at least an above average three-point shooter, despite shooting so horribly in college last season. This guy, a little bit younger, we're going to talk about now, and that is the forward from Memphis, Josh Minott, 20 years of age, 6'8". Now, he also shot a horrific percentage from three, 14%, and really didn't take any at all. That's not really his game. Probably more of an early second round sort of a player. He's 20 years of age, will turn 21 in the second half of the NBA season. One of the big things for me in looking at his numbers, he didn't play that much at Memphis, under 15 minutes, but you extract those numbers out to per 36, and there's a ton of steals and there's a ton of blocks. And those things are really interesting indicators for player success level heading into the NBA. What is his, like, the offensive stuff's not fantastic, obviously. What is his sort of level of play? Are we looking at like a Jared Vanderbilt level of offensive nothing, but really good defensive stuff at that forward spot? Is that the sort of archetype, I guess, as a player for Josh?
Yeah, he's kind of this, just natural elite athlete, somebody who's going to make a lot of create a lot of events on defense. Like you kind of alluded to, that steal rate was at 3.1%, block rate of 5.4, both really off the charts for somebody who, just coming into college. And I really thought a lot of the time at Memphis, he could have deserved more minutes this season. Obviously, they had a lot of weird things going on in the early parts of the season, and kind of went with some of those veterans, especially once DeAndre Williams came back from injury. But yeah, he's kind of this guy who, he's going to have to probably shoot it a little bit to get the most value in the half court offensively. But I think, he's a pretty good cutter. He's got a high motor. Obviously, that athleticism is going to help him out a lot around the basket. My thing with him is, like, if we can get him into a situation that has, potentially like a Miami that has a Bam Adebayo, or Sacramento with Domantas Sabonis, somebody that he can play off of and cut off of, and kind of get to move in, set some screens, roll to the basket, use that athleticism, at least in his first, couple of years as he gets acclimated and is able to play and cuts out some of those defensive lapses. I think that there's somebody that can be a really big threat. A Jokic also, somebody who could be a really big threat and find his way in the league.
I was just about to say, what about Denver? They've just traded JaMychal Green, who was playing backup 4, backup 5. They did draft Jared Vanderbilt all those years ago into that role. And yeah, I just love putting guys who are cutters next to Nikola Jokic, because he's obviously the best guy at finding those cutters, breaking to the basket. And he's pick 21 they have is maybe too high, but yeah, they just traded for pick 30. Is that too high for Josh?
I think that's fine, sort of in his general range. Like, maybe you could say it's a little bit too high. His mock sort of in that 40s range, early 40s range most consistently. But once we start getting into those 30s, it's pretty much like, if this is the organizational fit, this is the type of guy that you want in that archetype, then I think that's a pretty fine pick there at 30.
This is completely like off topic, but I don't know how you feel, but whenever I watch a Memphis game, I can't with their court. The blue court, I feel like I'm watching slam ball. You flick it on and you go, what is going on with this court? And it just bothers me. Does it impact you? Or have you just so like attuned to seeing it that you're just like, oh, it's fine. I can't with it. I just cannot deal with looking at that blue court.
Yeah, I get it. It's one of those weird ones. Like, Oregon is that way for me. Watching a lot of Oregon games, the whole tree situation is like kind of throws things off. But I get it 100%. It's like the Boise State thing in football.
Oh my God, yeah.
So, yeah.
Forgot about that Boise State one. Yeah, that's crazy as well. All right, let's go to another big man here. We're going out to Fresno State, Orlando Robinson. Again, a guy that's probably a second-round player, 6'11" center. He's a junior. He is about to turn 22 as well. But a lot of the statistical stuff from him is really interesting. He averaged 19 and 8 in 33 minutes. He hit 35% of his threes on 3 attempts per game. He averaged a steal, over a block, almost 3 assists per game as well. Everything there goes, okay, well, they are all massive numbers. Good threes, good assists, good rebounds, good blocks, good steals, good scoring, efficient stuff. But probably only like a back-end second-round guy, maybe doesn't get drafted at all. Are all of these numbers to do with size and age and bullying and teammates and conference and all that sort of stuff? Or is there a legitimate NBA upside here?
There's some NBA upside here. I think part of it is sort of the style of play that we see with some big men, as sometimes, throw it in the post, let him work. He's a pretty skilled big man. He does a lot of things. He might even handle it at sometimes, shows off his spin move. Pretty good finisher. Like you said, can stretch it out a little bit. But, playing in the Mountain West, there is a little bit of an advantage on his in his favor, just being able to do what he was able to do, his style play. Everything was kind of run through him in a lot of ways. But yeah, like there's some NBA upside there. If he can really stretch the floor, and, he's a pretty solid passer, and, has some of those guard skills, I think that there's potentially a place for him. Now, the biggest thing with him is defensively, he's going to be able to hold up and play, different coverages on the perimeter, and also kind of protect the rim in a better way and have better awareness on that front. Might not even block the shot, just having to be in the right spot or seeing the play develop is one of the bigger things for him. But and also athletically, that's another huge thing. I think he was one of the last guys in the sprint, and also I think he had the lowest vertical at the combine. But yeah, there's some stuff there offensively. I think it's just the athleticism and the defense that's really going to kind of dictate his NBA future, and it's the main reason why he's more of that late second round undrafted than a potential maybe like early second round type of guy.
So when we talk about his defensive limitations, whenever we think defensive limitations and centers, I'm always just going to go to Enes Freedom. Like, is this level of defensive unplayability or defensive unversatility?
Oh no, not that level of incapability on the perimeter and things of that nature. But he might not have the same type of energy on the glass as Ennis did in his best and kind of finishing at the rim. So, but it's also kind of a case by case thing. Like once certain players are in the league, it's a little bit tougher to get them out. Like if they're a veteran, they've been around here, they do certain things as well. Might not be as enticing for a rookie big man to kind of grow that in that way, but definitely not as at that level.
Let's go to the last guy, another big man. This one, an international big man, Yannick Nzosa, the 19-year-old 6'10" center from Malaga over in Spain. He's originally from the DRC. His numbers, I don't know how to read them because they're shocking. 10 minutes a game, 2 points, 38% shooting as a 6'10" center. Now, of course, playing in Spain, playing in these top-level leagues, unless you're Luka Doncic, you don't really get the opportunity to run a team or be the number one guy, and he's a bit part player, so hard to project through these stats. Nzosa's a guy that I've heard his name for a few years, but these numbers would make me think there's no way that this is NBA caliber stuff. Okay, is this an NBA caliber player? Is this just hey, you were never going to contribute to wins at the age of 18 in the Spanish league, so therefore you don't play, which is what we've seen for so many of these guys. And there's someone that I'm just completely blanking on, the guy that went to Houston last season. The what's his name?
Oh, Usman Garuba.
Yes, Usman Garuba, who played about 8 minutes a night or whatever it was in the Spanish league as well. Is Nzosa sort of at that level of prospect? Can he be that guy who's just been marginalized because of the realities of the European leagues?
He's the guy that I definitely think of the most often. I think Garuba was a little bit more advanced in terms of defensive awareness and coverages, but Nzosa is like a terrific athlete, 6'10" with a 7'6" wingspan, springy athlete in a way that Garuba just isn't. But yeah, like there's just a general uncertainty around him, and he's just kind of this like project pick who I think if he does work out, it'll be in 2 or 3 years, getting him to get acclimated to NBA system and just kind of his overall feel for the game in a lot of situations. Offensively, he's just not really there, like in any real form or fashion. He doesn't really have like a natural spot. He's still a little bit slight of frame. Not really that inside type of scorer, but also he's not someone who can shoot or has those ball skills out there either. Or is like a great decision maker. Garuba was a better decision maker on short rolls and things like that. But yeah, like it's gonna take some time. But the team that takes a chance on him, whether that be in the late second round or if that's in on a two-way deal or whatever it may be. It's going to be kind of a process, patience with him.
Is he a guy that's going to stay in Europe, do you think, for a year or two? And for teams like the San Antonio Spurs, who have 3 first-round picks and probably don't have room for those 3 guys on their roster, is there enough upside in him to be like, hey, we'll take you with our pick late 20s and you stay in Europe for 2 years and then come over in a couple of seasons? Or is that just is that too high for him?
I would be surprised. I'd probably be shocked if they took him in the first round. I don't put anything past the Spurs, and maybe I'd end up being wrong on this front, but I just don't know if you would want to gamble on somebody who's, seemingly that far away. I mean, he could possibly potentially stay overseas. I think there's been like some sort of things. I'm not 100% well versed on what has been going on with him lately. I think there was like some talks about transferring clubs potentially, or they had kept him out from.
Yeah, I think he has transferred because he played. I think he's at Malaga now, but he played at Unicaya last season. I think he has moved across to Malaga.
Yeah, so yeah, just there's a lot of different things going on over there, and I think that it could be a viable option for a player like him. Like what we were saying, it's going to take some time and patience, but I'd be surprised if it ended up in the first round.
I'm just trying to read through this stuff on this team stuff with him at the moment, and sometimes reading the names of these Spanish teams and stuff. And I'm like looking, is Unicaya and Malaga the same? I think they might be, but I'm not certain. So anyone here who's really in depth with Unicaya and Malaga, is it the same club? Maybe it is. I don't know. Let us know. But we're looking at Yannick Nzosa as an NBA prospect. So it'll be interesting to see. He has a guy that I've heard about for a few years, and that always makes my ears prick up just to think, maybe there's something there with him. But you're right. He probably is more of a second-round player. Keandre, thanks for coming on and chatting with me about all of these NBA draft prospects, potential picks, giving us your thoughts on those guys. If you haven't checked out his YouTube channel, go and do that. It's Hoop Intellect. What have you got being posted recently over on the channel?
Yeah, so today there's a TyTy Washington video coming up. Recently did one on both him and Mark Williams, and a lot of different other players. I can't really remember. There's a lot going on right now, draft time. But yeah, a lot of good stuff going on.
Keandre's videos are great. You can go and check out. He's got so many prospect videos, strengths, weaknesses, all of that sort of stuff. So go and check it out there. And thank you for coming on Locked On Fantasy Basketball with me, Keandre.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate you having me on.
And that will do it for us today. Don't forget to follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. If you are here on YouTube, thumb us up. Leave a comment down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.